All right. Go 3. Oh, yeah, we're live. I was about to hit the end broadcast, like, no, don't do that. Okay, here we go. Go 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean. We got another random flight. Well, we'll be discussing storytelling,
sex,
positioning, sex,
or sort of sex, not sexual positioning.
Wait, where's my drums? No. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll be talking about, let's see. Well, basically, these are all different ways. We've said before, there's only 3 ways to grow a business.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get more first-time customers. You got to get more repeat sales, or you got to get a higher consumption, either per sale or we said repeat sales. So, those are the only 3 ways to grow a business. So all of these things that I've seen this week or the last few weeks, I think do a good job of one of those 3. And one of them, I'm guessing could end up with, 300-400% increase, maybe not across the board, but it'll be interesting to see the numbers a year from now, how much more they sell because of this one kind of hook or idea that they're running their commercials on. So we'll get to that. We'll talk about story selling and how it increased the price of something by 6,000%.
Wow.
And a couple other cool things. So
yeah, good
but
stuff.
Before we do that, we'll go into our quick spin into our beverages.
Yeah.
I'll start.
Some hard stuff. Yeah, you got some.
Yeah, so I've been doing keto, not like super hard, like 70% fat keto, but more of a balance between protein and fat, and staying under 50 net carbs kind of thing. So the beer obviously breaks that. So I figured I'd go with bourbon. That's my excuse to have bourbon this episode, since we just recorded one.
Sure.
But this is a local distillery here, right 30 minutes from where we live. Iron Wolf, which I've talked about before.
Yep.
Just a good, good everyday bourbon. And in my favorite cup, I've got my little stainless steel carpenter's cup, that doesn't break. It's what I put in my ruck if I need to take it rucking. So just a good.
By the way, we didn't mention you're wearing one of the new shirts. I haven't got mine yet. I'm still waiting on to get mine. So it is the new Persuasion by the Pint. Now, some people might be looking at that from a distance and saying, "Does that 2 mayonnaise jars?" And no, those are supposed to be 2 cans.
Yeah, they did turn out kind of white.
The white just isn't the same. Is not quite the same with the white.
Yeah,
but I love the tagline, which is stolen from Sam Adams. Apparently, in this day and age, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we culturally appropriated it. Whoever did it. You're not supposed to do those kind of things. But let no man thirst for good beer.
Truer words have never been spoken.
I think that was Abraham Lincoln. Who said that.
One of those guys.
Elon Musk, Abraham Lincoln, one of those guys.
That's right.
Steve Jobs. Somebody.
Doesn't matter. Facts don't matter, man. We live. That's where we live today.
Wherever you want. Yeah. I mean, I just said it, so we'll just go with I said it.
That's right.
Our mutual friend Scott Smith, he used to say that. He speaks a lot, so he's like, the first time you use a quote, you say so and so said. Second time you use it, you're like I've said in the past. And the third time you use it, you say, like I've always said.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing how that evolves over time.
Yeah. It's all true. You didn't say you originally said it. You just said it. In the past, you've said it.
That's right. So, absolutely.
So yeah, good stuff. What are you drinking over there in Knoxville?
Well, thanks to a friend of mine who stopped by the office today. We had a little discussion, and he shows up at my office door. Thanks, Tommy Blackburn. And I'm going to mention his name because he brought me one of the few fives that I've ever had on the show.
Nice.
And one that I don't mind having once again.
Yeah.
The Dragon Fire Stout, or the Fire Dragon Stout. It's the original Jamaican Dragon Fire Stout, 10% ABV.
Nice.
He's
obviously a listener then, or?
Yeah, he does. He listens. Yeah. He listens to our episode. He sent me a text yesterday talking about their last week's episode with Eric the Marine. It's like, man, that guy's full of energy. I was like, yeah. That guy was totally amped on our show, man. I don't know. It made me feel like I was like taking Dramamine or something. I needed to take Dramamine. I don't know.
Yeah, he was on fire for sure. So. Well, good.
But so he brought me two of these. I put them in the fridge, and I was like, you know what? There's no way I'm not having one of these on the show, because this is one of the few fives. So I'm gonna have it again. I love it.
There you go. My favorite. when you find a five, you gotta come back to it.
You gotta come back to it again and again.
Yeah. So we're both going to kind of, known favorites, and that kind of matches, I think, with the episode. We're going with things that we've seen that we feel like are working.
Yep. So
we've got two beverages that have worked for us. We've got some things we want to talk about that I think are working out there in the world of advertising, persuasion, marketing, things like that. So I guess we'll kick it off, huh?
All right. So are you going to give yours a rating, or?
I don't know what I rated last time, but I will give this a 4. Just okay. Solid.
It sounds about right.
Yeah.
And of course, my 5. You never know, though. Have you ever thought like you could give something a rating, you could have it again, and you're like, maybe you get something completely different?
Yeah, maybe you're in a bad mood the first time or the second time you rate it.
Let me see. Nope.
Still good.
Still good.
All right.
Still good.
Find that. Gonna have to hunt that down.
Number 5. Yeah. It's and Tommy said, I can tell you, because I found this at the local establishment that I visit down the road. But he said he found this at Total Wine. It's a Total Wine.
Cool.
So yeah, you gotta check it out at least once, man. You gotta have this.
Yeah, send me a picture of it.
I will.
So this is cool. I just looked at my phone. So we'll start the flight with this. So I went back. I write an email for a company, or actually 2 emails a week for a company, just kind of a nurture sequence,
right?
B2C company. So every Tuesday and Friday, I write an email for them, and it's a mix of content, some stories, and then some offers and things like that. And I was like, what am I going to, sit down at the computer this morning, no idea what to write as usual. I'm like, what am I going to write about? And I was like, you know what I haven't done in a while, or I've never done for this client? I haven't done the old 9-word email for this client. It's like, I'm gonna see if that works. And sure enough, did the 9-word email, and just got a text from one of the owners. Said, lots of response from today's email. I need someone to help me respond to all of them. So, and if you're not familiar with the 9-word email, it's something Dean Jackson made famous. It's basically something you can use to revive kind of dead leads, or leads that have kind of fallen off your sequence and they're not really opening. And here's the basic formula. It's just their first name in the subject line. And then in the body of the email, it's just, hey, are you still looking for X, new home, new whatever, or something like that. And then you can either put your name or not. And if you're using a form, you want to hit 50 space buttons, hit the space bar 50 times. So it pushes all the footer links down. So it looks more like a personal email.
Sure.
And every time I've ever done it, it overwhelms the client with people responding back that have never responded back before.
Wow.
So in this case, these people do granite countertops.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question was, are you still interested in updating? Because I knew some of them had already bought, right?
No.
So some of these are customers of this place. So it's not like they need new countertops. But I was watching HGTV last night, and it's like these people had 7-year-old countertops, and they're already replacing them, even though granite will last for 50 or 100 or 10,000 years.
Right.
But they've already gone out of style.
Yeah.
But so I specifically changed looking for new to, are you looking to update your countertops?
Sure.
And then I added either in the bath, the kitchen, the bath, or even an outdoor kitchen.
That's right.
Just kind of open up their mind for possibilities. And then just left it at that. No trying to sell them, just asking the question. And sure enough, they get more responses than they can handle.
Oh, absolutely.
So pretty cool that works every day.
Because everybody wants white now. That's the trend.
Yeah.
So
and 5 years ago it was brown. Right before that it was black.
Yep.
So yeah, it's everybody's watching HGTV and they want whatever's latest. They're tired of their darker kitchens. That was all a thing. Now it's super white and bright.
Right.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what sales end up. But I thought it was kind of a cool, just one of those things that just keeps working in marketing. There's not a lot of those, I think, that just keep working as is without a lot of modification.
Sure.
Now you can only send that about every 90 days max. But man, when you do it, it just works.
Oh, absolutely.
So
and think of the, to me, think of the platform of HGTV in and of itself that has spurred that works hand in hand with marketing to first it's kind of feeding people the idea, all of the latest trends that they normally probably wouldn't see, maybe if they read a magazine or something like that. But, in this day and age, over the last 10 years, they've got so many different, programs on HGTV that shows them what's, basically previews, everything that's new and the latest and what you need to have if you're remodeling your kitchen. So most consumers are already ready. They're primed.
Yeah, unless you're a loser, and don't want, just want to be behind the times.
That's
like
right.
Your grandmother's house.
Exactly.
It's almost like just a giant guilt trip. I mean, it's I'm behind. It's like they've turned, I think what HGTV has done, with the backing of Lowe's and Home Depot for the most part, that's their two major advertisers. They have turned your house into, they're getting to the point where it's almost as much as like fashion for clothing.
Sure.
Certainly as much as men's clothing, maybe not as much as women's yet, but kitchen styles and living room and flooring styles and all these kind of things are changing faster than like men's clothing styles at this point.
True.
It's crazy. I think 3 or 4 years ago, Lowe's changed their tagline to always be improving. I'm like, well, at least you're honest about it.
That's right. In other words, always be shelling out money, right?
Yeah. So, I was like, that's the most honest slogan I've seen in a long time from a large company. Speaking of large companies, I want to jump into a commercial series that's been running for a little while, probably since January, like after the Super Bowl. I don't think it was in the Super Bowl. At least the YouTube date I'm looking at is January 20th. So I guess it was right before the Super Bowl, but it didn't air on the Super Bowl, I don't think. But it starts out as this old couple. They're sitting on the couch. It's like a documentary style. And it says, they got this little smirk on their face and they're like, we do it every night. And like, you instantly think like, what? These two old people do it every night?
Right.
But what it is, it's a commercial for Cascade. So if you've seen it, Cascade, some brilliant copywriter, I'm going to give the credit to the copywriter because they're the ones that do the research. Some brilliant copywriter discovered that the average new dishwasher, if it's an Energy Star dishwasher, only takes 4 gallons of 4 gallons of water per cycle.
Right.
But if you run the sink for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, it's the same as 4 gallons. So it's actually takes less water to run your dishwasher every night than it does to wash the dishes by hand every night.
Sure.
Now, if you think about this, on average, people probably run the dishwasher once or twice a week, depending on how many kids you have, things like that. And if you go to every night, you go from 2 times a week to 6 to 7 times a week. That's a 300% increase in consumption.
Yep.
And that's the second point we talked about in 3 ways to grow your business is more repeat sales. How do you get people to consume more and buy more? Well, you just get them to use it more often.
A whole lot, yeah.
And they, it's kind of like I wrote down some other examples, like, when they put, back in the day, they put on shampoo and conditioner, like rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people actually do that, but it's in the instructions. It's actually in the instructions to rinse and repeat. I think
oil, changing your oil every 3,000 miles. I mean, who came up with that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally made up. Totally made up. I mean, all the owner's manuals still say 7,500. And in fact, it's getting longer because of the way the engines are built and everything else. But yeah, Jiffy Lube and all those places, they still swear by the 3,000 or 5,000 miles.
Sure. They even write a little sticker. When you get your car serviced.
Yeah.
Like 3,000 miles. And so they give you the exact mileage. They tack on that 3,000 and say, bring it back right when you hit this mark, which I never do. Right.
Yeah. So you're always doing the math. It's like,
right. Yeah. Add 3 onto that.
Yeah. I thought the Cascade commercial was brilliant because it's a combination of like humor, a little sexual innuendo that gets attention right off the bat, but then it ends with like a really good logical proof stat. So they do a great job of hooking you with emotion and then using a logical stat at the end that is also tied to the environment, which a lot of people are going to respond to about saving water and everything else. So, and like if you go on the YouTube video on Cascade's channel, they've got, it's only like 15,000 views. There's 40 comments and people love it. Like overall, there's always one person that's like, yeah, but what about the electricity? It's like, well, you got a hot water heater too. So, they probably don't know they have a hot water heater. So I thought that was a great example of just how to increase the number of units that you can get somebody to buy. And that had to come from just research.
Sure.
Like that didn't come out of nowhere. Some copywriter was looking for an angle, was doing the research and came across that stat that a dishwasher uses 4 gallons and, probably then probably made the connection. Well, I wonder how much a, running tap uses on average.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that will set a promotion apart or a marketing campaign apart.
Right.
So they probably found that first and they're like, okay, well, how do we get into that without just being boring about it?
Right.
Right. So then you think about doing it every night and they're like, oh, there you go. Yeah. Do it every night. So I think it's brilliant. One of my top, I would be curious this time next year to look at the Cascade's numbers and see how impactful that campaign was. But I bet it's huge. It affected me. Like I'm using the dishwasher more because I had the same misconception. I was like, dishwasher uses a lot more water than a sink. Yeah. And it just seems like it would because you hear it running for an hour, right? So you think it must be using more water, but it's recycled water. So you,
it's really amazing because it's, increasing the consumption.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't necessarily have to sell more to more people. Right. Maybe you just have to sell more to your current base, buying group. Right.
Instead of trying to, one of the hardest things to do, especially in that category, is to get people to switch brands. It's very difficult because they grew up with the brand.
Sure.
Or they've gotten used to a brand. They don't want to chance it. So the best thing to do is to get people to use more, get your loyal buyers to buy more of it. Yeah. Much easier than finding new customers.
Yep. Absolutely.
But these commercials are so good. I would not be surprised if it swayed a few people over just because it's a fun commercial. And there's also a celebrity version with Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. Which I have not seen on TV yet, but it was on YouTube. So,
okay. Very cool.
Yeah. So you had something about framing that you wanted to cover then.
Yeah. So real quick, And I got this week from just basically it's experience, so experience in selling, that simplifying your message or framing your message makes all the difference in the world. So, you should always think about how you frame your product, and the best way to sell something is to simplify your message. And we touched on this with when Dave joined us on our last episode, which was really good because he talked about, we got into negotiation at the beginning, talking about negotiation and sales and how to, sometimes in negotiation settings, simplifying your message the best way, not getting into the nitty gritty, the details of things, but giving them a solid overview. But I was reading a book this week. It's called The Secret Sauce. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but it's on branding. But he used a great, the author, I forgot the name of the author. We'll maybe talk about it sometime. I don't think we've ever talked about this book, but it's on persuasion and branding. But he talks about what Churchill did years ago when he was trying to sell the idea of Russia being the great tyranny, or the great, the big communist threat, back shortly after the war. He was trying to really come up with something that really summarized everything. So he was trying to come up with all these ideas like, the great tyranny, or the great communist threat, or all of these things that really didn't quite work. But then he came up with the solid, what he finally arrived at was the Iron Curtain, right? And he gave that speech on the Iron Curtain, right? At the main. And so he could, he was using that analogy of the Iron Curtain spreading across Europe, and people could, simplify, really kind of resonate with people, what was happening as, Russia kind of was expanding some of their territory. And so kind of reminded me, or made me think about, situations in selling where you're trying to simplify your message or frame your message in such a way to make your customer really believe, or not get into the minutia, so to speak, of all the details. And that's the last thing you want to do. If your customer or your client or the prospect that you're trying to sell an idea or sell a product to, if they get caught up in the details, which is easy to do because they'll start asking questions like, you've been there, Sean, where they start asking technical questions, and that's the last place you want them to be. You want to stay away from that. What you want to do is summarize the message and simplify the message in the beginning, get them to buy into it, and then the details can come after. So if you can simplify your message, and I had an experience this week with a large manufacturing customer this week. We're actually a prospect that is becoming a customer. But I asked him, I said, in follow-up in the sales process, because I always like to do kind of a follow-up evaluation of like, what made you choose us, or what made you choose me to buy from, because there's options out there, right? And this is like, we're talking $300,000 a year annual, type sell, so this is a big deal, so one of the things that the feedback that I got from him is that you came across, you simplified the message, you sold the solution, and you didn't sell me the nitty gritty details. And what I've heard from so many other competitors, so many other companies out there, is they've given me the specs, the technical details, and all this stuff. And I just want a solution, right?
Yeah.
And so you came at me different. You didn't sell this product. You sold a complete solution, which included, obviously the chemistry for their process, but it was also introducing equipment and things like that. It was kind of a total solution that can help them reduce the amount of usage in their factory, right? And so there was a lot of, part of it was using the product, but part of it was like some equipment that's comes along with it that kind of helps them cut their, the amount that these operators are spraying, their robots are spraying on the molds and all of this stuff, and reducing that. And you sold this as a entire system, an entire solution package, right? Instead of just a product. And that's what sold me, because that's, at the end of the day, that's easy, because this guy was selling it to his bosses.
Right.
And so he said, the feedback that I got is, you made it easy for me to sell it to my management by presenting a package.
And his management, certainly doesn't want to hear the specs and the details, because that's his
That's
job,
right. That's right.
So he's like, well, if he's got a good boss, the boss can be like, well, if you think it's the best, and you think it's the right solution, because that's what his boss is looking for. So yeah, that's a great point.
And his boss trusted him. We were talking about the last episode where, with Dave, our guest, he was talking about, in selling, the process of selling is not always going to the person that you feel like is the decision maker. Sometimes you gotta sell the people below the decision maker first, because they're going to tell your story.
Yep.
And that's what I did in this situation. Was I presented the total package solution to the guy that would ultimately sell it. And I basically helped him by simplifying the message for his bosses. Right.
I think you can take that a step further. I know I used to do this in coaching calls when I was selling my really like high-end one-on-one packages. Whereas I was usually on the phone with one person, and they have somebody else, spouse or somebody that has to basically sign off on this. Right.
Sure.
Our first call, once they decided, would be me coaching them on how to have the conversation with their spouse, and like practicing and role playing with them, because I knew that could blow it up. Right.
Yeah.
But I used it as a lesson in coaching. I use it as a lesson. Well, let me show you how you create, the buy-in for this. And you can apply this to anything else you're doing. It's basically just, and getting really clear on the story. Well, what if they say this? And they were like, I don't know. And I was like, well, what if you said this, if they said that? And they're like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Right. So yeah, if you're selling and they've got to answer to somebody, like old school would say, you should never do a one-legged appointment, make sure all the buyers are in the room, all the decisions.
Sure. Right.
That sounds good, but it's also highly impractical.
It is. Because rarely do you come with you're given those situations where you have everybody in one place.
Yeah. And the fact is, if you do a good job and you offer the solution, you can coach someone to do the selling for you. Yeah. But you can't just leave them do it on their own, because they'll default to the brochure or something else. Sure. So you got to give them the analogies and the stories and the other things, and just, and even be willing to role play with them a little bit. So, hey, if you say this, what do you think your boss is going to say? Sure. And make it a collaborative effort, because they want the solution too. I mean, your guy wanted the solution. Yep. Once he saw it, he was like, yeah, so he would have taken any help you gave him to help sell his boss, because then it's out of his life and he can move on to the next project.
You've made his life so much easier, because he's under a lot of pressure, right?
Exactly.
And you've got to say, you always have to get to the source of like, what makes this person tick, or what's in their best interest. Sometimes their best interest isn't looking after the company, it's looking after their own job, right? Yeah. They want to get praise from their bosses, and they could care less about the company's bottom line, even though that may be part of what you're trying to do. But ultimately, if you can make their job and make them look good in front of, the people they answer to, and ultimately, possibly give them a raise or give them some kudos in the process, then you've done your job, and they're going to thank you for it all day long. They may not say it right directly to your face, which this guy did. He was like, he didn't necessarily thank me, but he was saying, you made it easy for me to, present the solution, which ultimately that's what he was looking for. Right.
Yep.
He's looking to make his job easier and make himself look better. So
exactly. And you can do that in copy too. I think in the close, especially if you're using longer form copy, you can add one of those stories kind of after the close, after the original, the price drop, and there's a place in copy where you can kind of do that. Hey, or even in an FAQ section or somewhere else, you can drop a story in that people can easily use.
Sure.
To sell whoever they need to sell on that. Right. Which, I think if you ever bought a new car and you go into the finance office and they sell you the warranties and everything, they do a pretty good job of that, right? They usually tell you a story of how much it costs if, the radio unit goes out now, because it's all electronic and all this kind of stuff, right? They tell you that whole spiel that you can then use to sell
Mhm.
whoever, else in your life that needs to
Yeah.
hear that. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. Think what was our recent guest, and I'm trying to remember his name, who had the story sales machine.
Yeah. Bill Mueller.
Yeah, Bill Mueller. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a prime example. Like,
Yeah.
who wouldn't buy a product that makes your job that much easier? I mean,
Yeah.
I would say a lot of people like that most of the people after we had that episode, most people bought that, man, because it was like, especially anybody that's in copywriting, because, anything that makes your job easier and helps your job get better, that's already done for you.
Yeah.
It's like
No-brainer.
solution right
Yeah.
there.
Well, speaking of Bill, he sent out an email this week, and so some
Good
of our
transition.
yeah, some of our listeners are probably now subscribers, so they've probably seen this story, but some of you probably haven't. And he told a story of how, and this is amazing, right?
Mhm.
And this is also a great lesson in like how to create content. So this was not something. So Bill stumbled across this, I imagine, and then he just talked about it in his email. But somebody else wrote the article, somebody else did the research, somebody else actually did what the article is talking about. So this is like a third person account at this point. But it's pretty fascinating. The title on Medium of this is How Storytelling Increased the Value of an eBay Item by 6,395%.
Wow.
So here's the basic story. Some guy goes around to garage sales and buys a bunch of junk for like on average like $1 a piece.
Right.
Like just stupid stuff. So one of it's like a plastic horse head with no it has no intrinsic value. It's not a collector's item, nothing, right? So he what he does, he goes on and he takes some of these items. I can't remember how many it was. This was back in 2006. He took about half of them and listed them on eBay. And then he took the other half and he reached out to authors and he said, could you write a story about this item? Like, not
Sure.
just a story about the item.
Yeah.
So they took this plastic horse head, which he had paid 99 cents for, attached the story to the description, and sold it for $62.95 for this little plastic horse head. So here's the kicker. Was this a one-off deal? No. In total, he spent $197 on the items and he ended up selling them for almost $8,000. A markup of 6,300%.
Wow.
So, I mean, this was a secondhand plastic horse that he bought for less than $1 and sold it for over $60.
Sure. Yeah.
Just because a story was attached to it. Nothing else.
I believe it.
No features, no other features or anything that you could distinguish.
Mhm.
Simply had a story.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about storytelling a lot, but I thought that was one of the best like dollars and cents examples of how powerful story actually is.
That's really good. You think about that, that's the value that you create within any product or how you separate something that's a common, what a lot of people would say, just a common commodity that you would have. Find ways to attach a story and create a value off of that. It's not just any,
I mean, you think that's really what advertising and marketing is, right? I mean, you take the J. Peterman catalog and his trench coats and hats, and he puts these flourishing stories to them, and makes you want them.
Pet Rock, right?
Yeah, Pet Rock, or how about the financial newsletter industry where I started writing copy? I mean, the way they talk about a stock and the opportunity and the story they tell behind that.
Sure.
If you were going down a list of ticker symbols, you would never know that, but they put such a story behind it. And you're like, oh my God, I got to have that.
Right.
And you're not actually paying more for the stock, but it just shows how story just moves people.
Ultimately, yeah.
And is worth real dollars and cents.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then another one, two more this week that were in my life. Like I said, we started doing some pre-prepped meals, Factor 45 meals, which I highly recommend. It's incredibly tasty, at least the ones we've had. And we've had about 12 of them so far.
Do you guys get those? How often do you receive those?
You get them once a week, and you can either get like 6 or 12 of them
Okay.
at a time. And they're already pre-cooked, so all you have to do is heat them up.
These are mostly dinner, right? You just have these for dinner.
Dinner and lunch.
Dinner and lunch. Okay.
Yeah. So, they're labeled as keto. So, but man, they're so good. But here's the thing. Here's the marketing lesson.
Okay.
One, they're high quality, so you like talking about them because they're actually good. That's one marketing lesson, is make your product good enough to talk about.
Sure.
But the other one is that when you sign up after the first week, they give you referral codes to share, $40 or $60 worth of meals with someone in your life. And that sounds simple. It's like, well, yeah, of course, everybody does that, but nobody does that.
Right.
Right. I mean, it sounds like, yeah, of course that's what you would do.
Sure.
But no, nobody does it.
Right.
Very few people do it, I should say, And what's funny is, especially having been working in the agency for the last year, like I have, and really seeing the numbers across a lot of different industries, what it costs to get a customer on Facebook or Instagram or things like that. It probably cost factor. Probably, I'm guessing in that niche, probably cost them $175 to $200 to get us as a customer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the CPA, the cost of cost per acquisition.
Sure.
So if they give you as a consumer, the new customer, $60 to give away, that's like a third the cost for them.
Right.
But most companies don't see that. They see, oh, I'm giving away $60. Well, no, you're saving $100 off of what you would do normally in your marketing. Plus, that $60 is, because it's coming along with the referral, is more valuable and going to be more likely to sell than cold traffic would be. Right. So I don't think people what it reminded me of is people don't put enough money into referral programs. Like they'll spend money all day on acquisition and get cheap when it comes to referral incentives.
Right.
I mean, how many decent referral programs? It's usually just something ridiculous. Like it's not even like you're almost embarrassed, or it's not worth your time to refer people out because it's so little.
Right.
But at the same time, the company is like paying 3 or 4 times that to acquire new customers.
Yeah.
So if you have a company, put out a referral offer, like, give your clients, look at your cost per acquisition. Mm-hmm. You should be willing to spend up to that. I would argue probably you should be willing to spend even more than that for a referral lead than what you would spend on a cold traffic lead.
All the time. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be willing to spend 2x on a referral lead over cold traffic.
I don't know what the percent. I mean, I could just probably summarize the amount of times that I've bought off of someone that I trusted, who has referred, over just seeing just a cold ad that I've never, been in front of before. That person who, I put my trust in, and obviously it's got to be somebody you put your trust in that refers. I mean, always going to buy over just something that I see a Facebook ad or something like that just, comes up in front of me, because we're always looking for validation. We're always looking for, even, it may seem like it's an interesting, they may have a great video or something like that, but everybody's been scammed at one time or two. So we know, what the danger is of buying something that, sight unseen. So we're always looking, even before we click that, checkout button, even though as attractive as that offer may be, we're trying to get some validation, right? Like, we need some backup here. Who else has bought this and what are they saying about it? It's so much easier when it's somebody that
exactly
has put their faith behind it. So
because testimonials still important, but they're kind of a dime a dozen, and you see them, you see so many of them, especially with Amazon ratings and things like that. It's like, I don't know these people. Are they real? Or are they not?
Yeah. You see these websites, it's got their first name. It's like, Joe from Lakeland, Florida, like, okay. I don't know. Is this guy real?
Yeah. So it's
Probably not.
yeah. So like if you can get an actual person to give something to their sphere of influence,
Yeah.
because the fact is, a lot of your customers are going to hang out with probably more of your customers, right? Because people kind of tend to hang out with people like themselves.
Yep.
So that's it just really reminded me that I need to take another look when I'm working with clients, and that referral programs need to be a little bit more intentional, or a lot more intentional, and be willing to spend the money on them.
Yeah. No doubt.
I think referrals have gotten, I know people who do affiliate programs, but even that's not the same.
Not
like
really.
a true referral program is different than an affiliate program.
Right. Because you know that the person referring is familiar, they've used the product or whatever you're promoting before. So you trust them more than, there's so many affiliate marketers out there that have never even bought the product. They just sign up to be affiliates. So
yeah, exactly. Well, the final thing is, I will say, we've talked about letting people experience your product as opposed to just telling them about it, right? And one of the class, either through demonstration or something else, right? So when you go buy a car, or used to be, now everybody's buying their cars online. I still don't understand that, but I think that's
we're old school, Sean.
We're old school. We're getting old. So the test drive, the puppy dog clothes, all those things where you let people experience the event. So
smell the leather, man.
Yeah.
You smell that interior.
Yeah. Pop the hood. I don't know what's there, but at least I get to look at it.
Yeah. We know there's an engine, right?
Yeah. Today it all looks the same. It's just a big plastic cover with the logo on it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so this company sent, first of all, this stood out in the mail because it's a newspaper, which I thought they were gone. Right. So first of all, it's different, and that showed up in my mailbox. But what is it? It's a full edition from May 5th to May 11th. But they obviously, what they must have done is they printed some extra editions and stamped sample edition on it. And it's a full-blown edition of this paper called the Epoch Times, which is a conservative paper. So obviously we're on a list somewhere. And then inside, it's got a little bit, a subscription card with a return envelope in it.
Right.
So it's that. But usually all you get these days, you might get a postcard and this, and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
To ask you to subscribe. And you're like, well, it looks interesting, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to like it, not like it. And they did some cool things on this, which I can touch on too. But, when I got this, I just laid it out on the counter and I started flipping through it, reading the headlines. It aligns with my worldview. They're saying what I already believe, So I'm like, all right, I think I'm probably the type of person that would buy, a subscription to this paper. So, but I would not have known that. I kind of get the feeling from their little flyer, but there wasn't enough there. This would not have moved me on its own.
No, you had to kind of feel.
Yeah. And to see,
you had to read it and smell. There's something about newspaper print too. Once you smell that, it's like, it's addicting, right? I mean,
right. And it's one thing to say, what people are saying, I know of these people, but I don't know these people,
No.
And then, pretty cool. They have this, this is a cool column here. They've got the issue and then the solution that the Epoch Times, the name of the publication, provides, so the issue is media bias, corruption, socialism versus freedom, broken traditional values. So they went through the big kind of things on there. So that's a really good piece of copy right there.
That's good summary. Yeah, absolutely. They summarized that
it
really
still
well.
didn't let me experience the product. So the fact that they sent this and I was able to experience the product, I could kind of read a couple paragraphs, get a feel for the style of the writing. Because as a reader and a writer, I don't want just bad writing. Right. So I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. Seems pretty, pretty legit reporting. Flip through the headlines. The headlines are stuff that I might be interested in. So, I mean, they got me, but they would not have got me had they not sent the actual paper.
Right. Yeah, you gotta test drive. You got to see what it's all about. Because
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, I mean, there's a lot of local papers. Because when we first moved into our new address, um, our local paper, the Daily Times, they started sending us papers. Like, I guess it kind of hook us, right?
Yeah.
But the product, it's all about the product too. So, you look at the product, and most, you see a lot of even the local newspapers today are pulling their stories from the AP, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, you're kind of like, okay, your stories are just retreads. So I'm not buying in. But I think that's where, you talk about a product, that's where things are going, like things that are confirm, or line up with our own opinions,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of that's the way news is going in the future, is like
Yeah.
segments to market to your own opinion groups, people
Yeah.
that are already have, and we all have confirmation bias. Let's not
Mhm.
be, let's not pretend that we don't. We all have confirmation bias to our own set of principles and beliefs.
Yep.
And we kind of want something that lines up with that, not something that doesn't. And you found, they were targeting someone, obviously, and like you and myself, that would fall in line with those, with exactly what their readership would be. So
Yeah. And smart, because they let you kind of live it and breathe it.
and they let you test it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'll pick, there's something about a newspaper too. It's like, because we got, we're in this digital age. And even when I travel, if there's I don't even like the USA Today,
But you always pick it up because
but I'll pick it up. Even,
Yeah.
or some of these hotels, when I stay out of town, they'll have a Wall Street Journal or USA Today. I
yeah.
always pick them up, just because there's something about holding a newspaper. And like, even if I hate most of the stuff in there, you and I know we'll sometimes like read through, just see if we can find some ads in there that we can
Yeah.
tear out.
Well, I think these days it's like it's a disconnection device, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
papers are big, newspapers especially. They're big. They require two hands to move, so you
That's right.
have to put your phone down,
Mhm.
right? Or if you're reading news on your phone, then also at the same time your text alerts are coming up, your other
Right.
stuff's coming up. Like it's just not a
Yeah.
play, and the newspaper becomes, and this has been true, since newspapers were around. They're kind of just like this little bit of a meditation moment in the mornings.
Absolutely.
If you get a paper, you sit back with your coffee.
Coffee. Yep. Coffee cup, paper.
Either you hold it with two hands, or like I
Mhm.
do. I go to the kitchen, like the bar, the big island in the kitchen,
Yep.
and I lay it down and I just kind of flip
Flip it out. Yep. Flip it
nice
out.
and big, and just kind of
Look
scan
at the
through
headline. You
articles.
scan the headlines. Yep.
Yeah.
Look at the articles, scan the headlines, look for some of the ads in that you can
Yeah.
kind of pull out and see.
And it's a very interactive feeling thing.
Yep.
And, even in the digital marketing space and things like that, when people have gotten away from the 3-ring binders and all that kind of stuff, it's, I think that's a mistake for a lot of people. I think
huge.
I think a lot more people should go back to that. But the main takeaway of this is, how can you get people to experience your product? And I think that's one reason like challenges are doing so well right now online, because it allows you to experience the guru that you're thinking about, and how they present information and how they make you feel.
Sure.
All these different things, because you get to spend, usually 3 to 5 days, an hour each day. So you really get a good sense of, is this somebody that I want to give my money to?
Right.
Or not. And it's pretty clear after that. I've been to some challenges. I'm like, nope, this guy is not for me. This guy grates on me, or whatever. But then there's other I go to, and I'm like, yeah, I like the way they think and they talk, and the way they present, the way they teach.
Absolutely.
And it saved me money for some clients, and it made me buy more for other products. So, that's the question. How can you make your lead magnet, your, initial contact with a new prospect more interactive? I mean, for you, Jonathan, you're in-person sales, so you kind of do that. But for the rest of the world who's virtual, it's not many.
Well, I still am old school. A lot of my selling, people are like, I'll send you a link by email. Man, I still love to hand out things when I'm in a meeting.
Yeah.
There's something about tangible. So I'll print up like literature and stuff like that, even if I have to make it myself.
Yeah.
I'll create it because I'm pretty good. I'm decent enough at like, InDesign and, some of these software programs just to not hurt myself, but basically put together something that's, color print that I can put maybe a couple of pages together,
Yep.
go over to FedEx office, put it together in a nice format. And I've done that so many times. I literally have, won, $1 million accounts off of simply going to, putting like stuff together in a like FedEx office, going over to FedEx office, printing out like, basically a little booklet that's about 30 pages. It's got everything, again, going back to that simplification of your message, like simplifying everything down to the detail, like colors, statistics and everything they can flip through with like little tabs and stuff like that. That makes it easy for them.
Yep.
At the end of the day, man, I'm a guy that just likes to hand you something, right?
Yeah.
And where everybody else wants to send you a link, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that I'm always gonna, that's just the way I am. I like to hold things and I like to read through things. We both are like that. We like to tangibly hold a book. And I'm the same way when I hand something to a client or a prospect. I like to print it out. Even I don't care how old you think I am. I like to print it out and hand it to you, right? And people appreciate that, right? Because they're like, okay, cool. And they take it back to their desk and they will read it.
Yeah.
They won't, sometimes they'll forget an email. You can email them all day long and they're bombarded with emails. Sometimes
it gets buried, but that packet will sit on their desk.
Exactly.
And they'll see it.
You can do it FedEx office. You could do it like we've talked about mini book, putting your presentation together in a mini book format, with the.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you put it in a nice envelope, or a nice folder, they're probably not going to throw it away.
Right.
They're going to set on the edge of their desk. And here's the thing. Even if they don't look at it, like go into it, every time they glance at it, they know what it is and they think about you and they think, I need to get to that. So you've got occupied space in their mind. Yep. Whereas if you send a link by email, they don't ever see it until they like dig through their email to find it. You don't keep, maybe if you keep it in your email at the top half above the fold, you might see it, but that's usually not the case. It usually gets pushed down.
Right.
So you're getting extra time in their head, even if they're not reading it.
Yeah.
The material.
The lessons I learned a long time ago is when you ask them, did you get my email with the link that I sent you? And they're 99% of the times that prospect will say, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Yeah.
Which is legit. People are busy and so I don't even bother anymore. Yeah. I'll send an email, but I'll also, follow up with sending it either FedExed to them or handing it to them in person, depending on the situation, so they can hold it.
Well, I can tell you that with the cost of just lead gen right now, hitting $1 to $3, depending on the niche you're in, maybe $5 to $10 in some niches.
Yeah.
To put something in the mail to them may cost you an extra $2 or $3, but you'll stay top of mind after you get that lead.
Absolutely.
So much longer than if you don't. Because how many ebooks have you downloaded that you were going to get back to?
Right.
And you don't even know the title or where they are on your hard drive.
That's right.
Never got.
I got a whole folder of Bob Bly ebooks that I've never, and I love Bob Bly. We've had him on the show, but I've never read. Right. Yeah. I was like, I got to download that and get to it. But nope, haven't done it.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a big resurgence of more physical products and things like that. As digital costs get more expensive, you're going to have to go back offline to keep that customer engaged, or else you're going to have to re-engage them for another $5 or $10 online,
right?
Through retargeting and everything else. So why not just retarget? Just add that to your retargeting budget, and just send out something for $3 or $5 or $10, and you'll stand so far above the crowd. It's unbelievable.
And here's a little secret that, and I wasn't going to say it like with our last guest who's in the publishing industry, But let me tell you a secret, and this is my opinion, and I know it's a lot of other people out there, and it's probably you too, Sean. I'll pay more for something that's packaged in a 3-ring binder than I will something that's packaged like traditionally, like a traditional book.
I would say I agree, and I would say if every course I'd bought had put a $99 or a $149 order bump that says get the printed version,
yeah,
I would have bought it.
Yep,
take it every time. You know, and it probably would have cost with the fulfillment house maybe 25 or $30.
Yeah,
and you make an extra 75 to $100.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
Because if I print it out at home, it's probably going to cost me that. Like I know it's going to cost me 60 to $100 to print a course out plus the time. Or if I take it to Kinko or showing my age, Kinko's FedEx office.
Tried to say that a couple of times. Kinko's.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think you got to do more of that for sure.
Yeah.
I'll leave one more example of physical stuff.
Right.
So when I went to a job fair at AWAI when I was getting into copywriting, you know, a lot of people had like their card and like, you know, email and things like that, or, you know, like you said, they would have a place where you could download their resume or their packet or things like that. I went to I think I bought from Uline. I bought like the crazy looking envelopes, like the sparkly, you know, foil envelope. And then I went to the Dollar General store and I just started looking around, like what could I use for lumpy mail?
Right.
And I found dice. So I grabbed all these dice, and then I wrote a cover letter that said, "Don't roll the dice with your next copywriter."
That's awesome.
Put a pair of dice in there, put my packet in there, and I handed those out, and they were like, you know, thick and had the lumpy to it. So like, oh, can't wait to get back to the room and read this, you know, because they're at a job fair. They don't have time to look through that stuff. They're just shaking hands and they don't remember who's who.
Right.
So I gave them this big packet, and every time I followed up, they're like, yeah, that was really cool with the dice and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, hire me.
Top of mind, man. Top of mind right there.
And it got me some gigs. Yeah. So, because
how cheap was that, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the
Dollar General, picking up some dice.
It was probably an extra $1.50 per, you know, quote resume pack, between the envelope and the dice. Not even that much, because I think there was 8 pair of dice per pack for, you know, so not very much at all. Nope. Took a little extra effort, but so worth it. So worth it. So
following that same, you know, Dollar General thing. I mean, what can you find on your typical shelf? You go to a toy section, you can find Army Men, you can find all sorts of stuff. You know, Dan Kennedy for his boot camps, obviously put a little Army Men in there.
Yep.
I mean, you get a bag of Army Men for a couple of dollars, right?
Yeah.
I mean, put one of those in each. I mean, shoot,
people remember it.
Yep, exactly.
So all right.
Good stuff. Yeah. So for all of our listeners, if you like this, you can find it over at Persuasion by the Pint. You can find a lot of other episodes just like this, persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, Stitcher Radio, iHeart. If you like what you're listening to, leave us 5 stars, as we would like to leave our pints, 5 pints. I got that all mixed up. Okay. Man, so we would like
that was close, man. That's good. I like where you're going with it, but yeah, it just fell apart a little bit.
It fell apart because of
10%.
But yeah, leave us 5 stars, like we would like to leave our beers 5 pints. 5 stars. We'll take 5 stars. Just leave us 5 stars.
Yeah.
Shut up. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
All right.